All right, welcome back, everyone. It is currently 7:44 p.m. Central Time, Monday, November 14th. Doing this a little early this week because I'm going to be out of town later in the week. I'm heading to good old Green Bay, Wisconsin. First time I've been there since I left. My family moved there in 2003. And we left in November of 2005. First time going back ever since then, so I'm very excited. 17 years. Almost to the day. I think we left like November 5th. It was early November, so almost 17 years to the day. I think that's funny. So anyway, Green Bay plays on Thursday night. Which is why I'm going to Green Bay, Wisconsin. No one just goes to Green Bay, Wisconsin because they want to go there. As Aaron Rodgers said, it ain't a vacation destination. It's not. But Green Bay plays on Thursday. I'm not going to be able to podcast later in the week, so you got to bump it up to early in the week. So that's what I'm doing. Let's go ahead and discuss the week. Hang on a sec. I got to get on my phone real quick. Okay. All right. So let's recap. I don't think I'm going to do picks this week. It's Monday. I usually wait to get a feel for the injury reports and who's practicing and who's not, and I can't really do that on a Monday. So anyway. Let's recap the week. So last Thursday, Carolina beat Atlanta, which I did not see coming. I thought Carolina was just about done. Getting trounced by Cincinnati the week before. By 3 scores. It felt like that. The team was like the wheels were starting to fall off because they had been somewhat competitive after Matt Rule was fired, and I thought that was a sign of it's about they're about to trail off, and there they are Thursday night getting a win. As for Atlanta, Thursday night games are weird, and that was on the road, short week. I mean, anything can happen in these Thursday night games. But Carolina needed a win more than Atlanta did, and they got it. I don't really think that, Atlanta's terrible, like I do Carolina. But Carolina was, at home, was the home team, short week. It makes sense. So Seattle-Tampa, that game was in Munich. First time the NFL plays a game in Germany. I didn't watch much of this game. I caught the tail end. Honestly, what killed Seattle, and I guess what helped Tampa Bay, was that Seattle could not run the ball. Let me pull it up here. Seattle ran the ball 14 times for 39 yards, which I was surprised. Seattle had ran the ball very well in their last 6 or 8 games. And Tampa Bay's defense had been vulnerable at times against the run this season. I thought Seattle had a very favorable matchup, and they didn't get it done. I still say play that game in the States, Seattle or Tampa. I think Seattle probably wins. Like Thursday night games, these international games are weird. You don't know how a team is going to handle the travel. Seattle had a further way to go, and I don't think that should be ignored. Tampa, though. Back-to-back wins. I think that makes them, 5-6? 5-5, sorry. So Tampa, I don't want to say that they're back because they still didn't play all that well. But back-to-back wins, they're now 500. They're in a decent spot going forward. Miami, although I will get to them in a bit. Minnesota and Buffalo. So Minnesota wins. Hang on. My ESPN app on my TV is acting up. Not letting me watch Monday Night Football. There we go. All right. So, Minnesota, Buffalo. I have a lot of issues with this game because social media just has been really quick to call the Vikings underrated, most slept on 8-1 team of all time. Sorry, I was reading a text. But Miami, I keep saying Miami. Minnesota, everyone's so quick to say, how underrated this team is. How they're slept on, most underrated 8-1 team of all time. Nobody has given them much attention, and I think it's the opposite. I think everyone won't shut up about them. And I don't agree with everyone else. James is very high on the Vikings, and he thinks I'm being a biased fan when I say I don't think this team's that good. But I have the evidence that shows that they're not that good. So of their 8 wins, 7 of their 8 wins have come by one possession. 7 wins by a total of 36 points. That's an average of 5. What else did I see? They're tied for number 1 in takeaways. That's kind of a big deal because their defensive numbers are pretty pedestrian. They've also been outgained this season. Their defense allows more yardage than their offense gets yardage. Although being ranked number 1 in turnover and takeaways will do that. Because it gives you shorter field typically. Also, if you look at point differential, of the teams that are currently slated to make the playoffs, if you take those 14 teams and rank them by point differential, Minnesota is around the middle, tied with San Francisco, who is, 5-4 now? So the numbers show Minnesota is not as good as its record. 7 wins by 1 possession, number 1 in takeaways. They've been outgained. They're not as good as everyone thinks. Don't be fooled by the record. Don't be fooled by the record. As Josh Pate says, not all records are created equal. Minnesota is not as good as its 8-1 record. Honestly, they were terrible in this game. Buffalo gave it away. If not for going for it on 4th down where Josh Allen ended up throwing an interception, Minnesota loses that game. And honestly, they still should have lost because they were stopped short of the goal line late in the game. Buffalo then fumbled the snap at the 1-yard line. Minnesota ran it back, 6 inches for a touchdown. The ball has broken Minnesota's way more times than I can count this season. How many double-digit deficits have they faced this season and come back to win? Quite a few. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's quite a few. It feels like every time I tune into the Vikings every week, they're down double digits. They were down double digits against Buffalo. They were down double digits last week against Washington. They were down double digits against Detroit earlier in the year. They've come back and won each one. Now, that is a testament to them, but at the same time, you can't keep getting in these deficits and winning by a hair and convince me that you're one of the top teams in the NFL. I don't buy it. Call me biased. I don't really care. I'm not buying the Vikings. Sorry. As for the Bills, I worry about the Bills a little bit because they have struggled in close games this season. It just feels like whenever the game is close, they get tight. However, at the same time, when they're on, no team in the NFL is better than them. Can they stay on? I question that because you're going to get a lot of close games in the playoffs. And they've been tight in a lot of these close games. So I worry a little bit about Buffalo. They should have won that game a couple times this year. They should have won, and they got beat. I worry about them a little bit. All right, moving on. I've spent too much time on that as it is. All right, Detroit and Chicago. So my Twitter feed was nothing but Justin Fields highlights. And don't get me wrong, Justin Fields has played well. His passing numbers are still kind of pedestrian. However, he is running the ball very well. He just broke the single game record, last week, the week before. So he's becoming dynamic. I'm not sure it's sustainable, but he is becoming dynamic. He's found a rhythm the last couple weeks. And if you were on my Twitter feed on Sunday, you would have thought the Chicago Bears were up by 50. I was shocked when I checked the score to see that Detroit had won. I was like, holy crap, in journalism, you always hear about the buried lead, which means the reporter left out the best part of the story toward the end or in the middle and didn't start with it, which is what you're taught to do. And I was like, holy shit, that's a buried lead. All I heard was how great Justin Fields looks, and it turns out the Chicago lost the game. So anyway, as for Detroit, this is not back-to-back wins. After it looked bleak for them a couple weeks ago, they've now won 2 in a row. They're now, 3-6, roughly? Yeah. So 3-6, not great, but I thought this team had a chance to win 5 or 6 games. They're halfway there, about halfway, through the season, so they could be on track going forward. Chicago, I mean, this could be best case scenario for Chicago. They keep losing, but Justin Fields is showing a lot of promise. Could that propel them going into next year? Could they think that they have something in him? I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little hesitant right now because I don't think the way Justin Fields is playing is sustainable. Just a lot of these rushing quarterbacks flame out after a while. There are some outliers. Like I do believe Mike Vick was an outlier. And I believe Lamar Jackson is an outlier. But those guys are like, as a West Virginia fan, that's like having Tavon Austin at quarterback who has the ability to throw. Those guys are outliers. Justin Fields is not either one of those players, although he is dynamic in the run game. But, like I said, this season is going, I think, how Chicago fans would want. They didn't have high expectations going into this season. And, in terms of win-loss record, they probably met expectations. And at the same time, Justin Fields has shown some promise. So I think they ought to feel good right now. Moving on. Denver and Tennessee. Denver's bad. I expected more from Denver coming off a bye week. But I think I wrote it on my blog. They only scored 10 points. They averaged around 4 yards per play. That's really poor. I mean, 5 yards per play is kind of average in the NFL, and they were at 4 this past week. They were really bad, which is a shame because I thought they showed some promise in Seattle when they beat Jacksonville, but not a good look coming off the bye week. I think that makes them now 3-6 also. I don't see them being able to turn it around at this point. Tennessee's playing well defensively. They're not that dynamic offensively, but they get the job done. And it starts with their defense, which has allowed 15 points in their last 6 or 7 games. They're good defensively, and they run the ball, obviously, with Derrick Henry. I think this team could be somewhat dangerous in the playoffs, but I don't see them making a really deep run. Jacksonville, Kansas City. I said last week I think Jacksonville has a chance to keep this game close. However, I'm not going to beat that drum or take a victory lap on it because Kansas City turned the ball over 3 times in this game. If they don't turn the ball over 3 times, the Chiefs win this game, and I'm not sure it's particularly close. Chiefs are the far better team. The good news for Jacksonville is that Trevor Lawrence has played well these last 2 weeks. So, like Justin Fields, I think you take the loss if you're one of these teams, as long as your quarterback shows some promise. Justin Fields is kind of doing that. I think Trevor Lawrence is kind of doing that. It's not all doom and gloom for these teams right now, I don't think. Chiefs, got to button it up, play better. They probably should have won by more, and they didn't. Losing the turnover battle by 3 and still winning by 10 is almost unheard of in the NFL. Cleveland, Miami. Cleveland coming off a bye week was horrible. And honestly, outside of that Cincinnati game, Cleveland has been terrible. What's their record in their last 6 games? I saw it last night. Now I forgot. So in their since the opener, Cleveland has won 2 games. Yeah, 2 games. So they are 2-6 in their last 8, and they really haven't played all that well. Excluding the Cincinnati game, Cleveland has not been good this season. The good news is that Deshaun Watson's only out for 3 more weeks, so they got that going for them. Miami, this is now, I think, 3 games in a row. They've scored at least 31 points. They're rolling offensively. I got to give them credit. Tyreek Hill's having a big year. Tua Tagovailoa's having a big year. I like the Mike McDaniel hire, and he's, I think, shown his ability to coach this season. So Miami's in a good spot. I'm still not sure what to make of them defensively. Cleveland's not that good of an offense, and recently they have given up points. So, but they've proven they can win in a shootout. So that they got that going for them. Houston and New York Giants. I expected more from the Giants. Only won by 8. I thought they would win and cover, which I'm not sure if they did or not. But I expected more from the Giants coming off a bye week and at home. Houston has not been very good this season, especially offensively recently. However, at the same time, the Giants have exceeded, I think, 24 points one time this season. They're not a very dynamic offense. Brian Daboll has done a really good job this season of winning games, kind of ugly. But, at the same, I shouldn't say that. But, well, I meant I had a different thought in mind. But they found a way to win. They're not that dynamic on offense, though. And like I said, Brian Daboll's done a really good job trying to hide that and winning despite that. As for Houston, they're going to have a chance to pick up some wins these next couple of weeks. I think they got Washington this week, and I think they get Cleveland later in the year. Although that might be a Deshaun Watson revenge game, or I guess a Houston revenge game. I don't know. But they seem pretty set as the worst team in the league right now. Although that could change, you never know. New Orleans at Pittsburgh. I felt so foolish last week picking New Orleans. Should have known better. Mike Tomlin's a good coach. He was coming off extra time to prepare. I should have known better. I went with New Orleans anyway because I didn't trust Pittsburgh's offense. New Orleans stunk in the game, only 10 points, and they averaged how many yards per play did they average? They averaged 4.1 yards per play, so not good at all. Whereas Pittsburgh wasn't much better offensively, scoring 20 points and 4.8 yards per play. But they did run the ball very well. They ran the ball for over 200 yards, whereas they held New Orleans to just 29 yards rushing, averaged 5.0 yards per play. Pittsburgh really dominated this game, but the final score didn't show it because they're not that dynamic offensively. Indianapolis beat Las Vegas. I think I'm done with Las Vegas. I've always kind of had an excuse to pick them. The week before it was Jacksonville. This past week it was Indianapolis, who didn't have a coach. And I've given them excuses to pick them, but I'm to the point, I'm done. They're now 2-7. Josh McDaniels is not doing a good job. They're kind of scoring points. Devontae Adams hasn't been insignificant. But they're just not there. Josh McDaniels isn't getting it done, and I don't know if that's going to change. I don't think he's going to get fired. I do think the Davis family will see it through, at least for this year, maybe give him another year. I would be shocked if he's fired after this season. They got to get better defensively. Their O-line has really isn't that good either, which is what I said in the preseason. I was not sold on the Raiders being that good. Granted, I thought they'd be a whole lot better than this, but bad defense and a bad O-line is going to slow you down. As for Indianapolis, look, everyone made fun of the Jeff Saturday hire and said, pointed to how, we can't seem to hire black head coaches, but we hire this white dude off the street, and he goes in there and gets a win in his first game as an NFL interim head coach. So kind of shows that these teams might know what they're doing on that front. And I don't expect Saturday to stay a head coach. I think he did this as a courtesy to the Colts. He played obviously with Peyton Manning for a long time, was the starting center for the Colts for a long time. I genuinely believe he did this as a courtesy, and I don't expect him to remain the head coach or even stay as a coach in the NFL. I do think that this is just like hey, I'm here till the end of the season, and y'all can find someone else sort of deal. Arizona at LA Rams. Arizona won. The Rams are really struggling. I don't think Matt Stafford played in this game. I know Wolford. Yeah, Matt Stafford didn't play. He was coming off a concussion, I'm pretty sure. Cooper Kupp doesn't look like he played either. So, I'm sorry. Yes, it looks like he did at the very bottom there. Or if he did play, he was limited. It it's hard to win, without Stafford and Kupp if they're both hurt. But, even if Stafford had played, he has not played well this season. And the Rams, were about as poor as they've been. Yeah, about as poor as they've been all season, even without Stafford. Scored 17 points, averaged 4.3 yards per play. That's kind of been that's where they've been the last few weeks. And not many people are talking about it. Sorry, I'm turning the volume down on my iPad. But that's who they've been the last few weeks. And I really don't think they're going to be able to turn this thing around. Tampa's starting to, and I'll get to Green Bay here in a bit, but they might be starting to turn things around. The Rams, I'm not so sure. O-line has not played well. Outside of Cooper Kupp, really don't have any receivers playing well. Matt Stafford has struggled a lot, especially on the road. So, Arizona, they stay alive. What does that make them now? 4-6? Yeah. They're 4-6. They're scoring some points offensively. Their problem has been their defense, which did play well this past week, but everyone has played well defensively against the Rams' offense this season. We'll see if they can keep this up. I'm not convinced that they can. I don't see them being much better than this 4-6 record. They might be like 7-10, which might be slightly better than what I had them at in the beginning of the season. So let's get to my Green Bay Packers, who finally found a way to win. Didn't see it coming. So Dallas came to Lambeau. I fully expected Dallas to crush Green Bay. I thought their defensive front posed a lot of issues for Green Bay's offense. And for the bulk of the game, it kind of was that way. Green Bay really couldn't get much going offensively. They did a little bit in the first half. And then the third quarter was bad. It was a two-score game. It was 28-14 going into the fourth quarter. I had kind of given up on the game. I was like, this game's over. And Green Bay battled back, scored 14 points, 17 unanswered, got it to overtime, won in overtime. Everyone's blaming Mike McCarthy for going for it on fourth down. I don't know if that's that big of a deal in overtime. It's a chance to win the game, and I can't really fault him for that. He knows if he kicks it, Aaron Rodgers is going to get an opportunity. Nobody knows Aaron Rodgers better than Mike McCarthy outside of Green Bay. And he knows, he does not want the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands with a chance to win the game. I can't fault him for going for it. Now, I will say, I kind of even thought it live. I wasn't crazy about the play call. They only needed 4 yards, and it felt like that they ran a really long developing play. Like all their guys ran 10 plus yards down the field, it looked like. And I thought, why are they going so deep? They only need 4 yards. Run something, some slants, something just over the middle that can get you 5 yards. But yeah, it looked like it was a long developing play that Prescott had to sit in the pocket for a bit and watch it develop. And the pass rush finally got there. The pass rush had been a problem all day, which is going to happen after you lose a guy like Rashawn Gary for the year. But pass rush finally got there. And as for Green Bay's offense, do I dare say that they figured things out? I won't go that far, but I saw some things that I liked. They're still running the ball pretty well. O-line wasn't great. They got after Rodgers a little bit. But the story of the game is Christian Watson, who has not, I shouldn't say has not done much as a rookie, because I feel like he's had some bad luck his rookie year. Very first play of the year, Rodgers sends him throws the ball his way and he drops it, which probably would have been a touchdown. So not a good start. He's battled injuries. He's been on and off the injury report. It feels like every time he's been healthy to play, he gets hurt within the first drive of the game. So he's been on and off the injury report, and he finally played, and he showed up, which is a good sign. I've been waiting on this dude to pop. Romeo Doubs has kind of already popped, but he's a rookie. You can't really rely on him all that much. He's a little inconsistent. And, yeah, I've been waiting on Christian Watson to show up, and my God, he did. 4 catches over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. Big time game from him. I got a lot of high hopes for him. Hopefully he can continue to build off this and gain some confidence, which is something he had been lacking. So, Green Bay. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I will say they got the win at the right time for me to, by the time I'm coming to Lambeau, they're coming off a win, so I like that. Sunday Night Football. LA Chargers at the San Francisco 49ers. Closer game than I thought. I didn't watch the game, truthfully, but every time I checked the score, the Chargers had a lead. And I thought, damn, are the Niners going to give this up? And they ended up rallying in the second half. I think they scored 12 points in the second half. So not a great game from the Niners, who I believe were coming off a bye week. But they averaged 5.5 yards per play. That's not bad. They held the Chargers to 4.2 yards per play, which is pretty good. They're also getting healthy defensively. I think that's important because the Niners haven't really been healthy defensively this season, and now they're starting to get there. How did McCaffrey play? McCaffrey, not much to report. But the Niners did run the ball for 150 yards, so that's good. That is pretty good. I think the Niners are still going to be really good. I don't worry about the outcome of that game too much, even though it was close. The Chargers really needed a win. The Chargers have not played well in recent weeks. They have struggled against bad teams for about 5 or 6 weeks in a row. Lost a game or two during that stretch. I don't remember. Oh, no, they did lose to the Seahawks. They did lose to the Seahawks, sorry. So they needed a good performance. They got one. They came up short. I still think the Chargers are kind of fake, a little bit like the Vikings, except their record isn't as good. I don't buy Brandon Staley. This team has an upward hill. The good news is that Las Vegas hasn't played up to par. Same with Denver. It's there for the Chargers to finish second in the AFC, or AFC West, I should say. If they do, I think they're in a pretty good spot to make the playoffs because, well, the AFC East is pretty stacked, and then Baltimore or Cincinnati is going to be in a good spot. I don't see any team from the AFC South, so yeah, the Chargers do have a bit of an uphill battle. They're in a logjam there between Buffalo, New York, New England, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. I'm not going to throw Kansas City in there. LA. All those teams are fighting for. I don't think the Chargers are going to be able to win their division, but they're fighting for 3 playoff spots. Someone's going to win in the AFC East, and someone's going to win in the AFC North. So it really comes down to 4 teams competing for 3 spots. Chargers could very much be on the outside looking in. So they got a ways to go, and their schedule doesn't really get much easier. So yeah. Monday Night Football is going on right now. The Eagles have the lead. So let me go ahead and switch to college football. It was kind of a wild week. It was a jam-packed week. A lot of good matchups. Penn State shut out, actually. Maryland, didn't quite see that coming. UCF beat Tulane. That game is likely going to decide which Group of 5 team goes to the New Year's Six Bowl, so there were ramifications for that game. And I think Tulane's a good team, but UCF has a lot more talent. I think they have the better coach in Gus Malzahn. UCF is good, and they're in a great spot right now to go to a New Year's Six Bowl. Tennessee beat up on Missouri, not surprising. LSU struggled with Arkansas. I'm not totally surprised. I thought there was a very good chance LSU would come out or hungover. Emotional win over Alabama. First time they beat them, since 2019. But anytime you beat Alabama, it's a big win. But I had a feeling there would be a hangover because Arkansas was desperate. LSU really wasn't. And it showed on the field. The spread for this game, I think LSU had a 6 or 7 point spread and won by 3, so Arkansas covered. But yeah, I'm not really surprised that LSU struggled in that game. Notre Dame barely got by Navy, which is a little bit of a surprise. Purdue beat Illinois. Purdue's a team I can't figure out. I've had them on my blog and my weekly picks a few times this season, and it feels like I've picked for them quite a bit, and they've let me down, a couple times. And this game, I was like, I've given up on Purdue. And I thought, Illinois was a pretty good defensive team. And Purdue is very one-dimensional offensively. Well, I was wrong. Illinois ended up losing the game, gave up 31 points. I think that might be the most points Illinois' defense has given up all season. So now the Big Ten West goes through West Lafayette. Shout out to my friend, I almost forgot his name. That's not good. But shout out to my buddy, Jared McLeaver. Only dude I know besides his wife, from Indiana. Big Purdue fans. And I know he's having a fun time this season, even though I don't think it's gone the way he wanted it to. But they still have a chance to go to the Big Ten Championship. Vanderbilt beat Kentucky. I do want to touch up on this a little bit. I don't remember. When was the last time Vanderbilt won a conference game? It's been a long time. So, good for Vandy. Clark Lee, I think that's how you pronounce it, had a really uphill battle with that job. It feels like you're starting to see some dividends pay off because Vanderbilt's won 4 games. I mean, when was the last time we could say that about Vandy? So, good for Vandy. Good for Vandy. So, Alabama got by Ole Miss. Escaped. For a while there, I picked Alabama to win. For a while there, it looked like Ole Miss was going to win. I think Ole Miss was up 17-7. They were up double digits, I think, at one point, and I was genuinely concerned. However, Alabama found a way to battle back, which is good because they've really struggled on the road. Once I saw the spread for this game at Bama minus 12, I was like, I would hammer Ole Miss plus 12. A lot of rumors. Well, I'll get to that in a bit. I won't touch up on it now. But that was a big win for Bama. They really needed that after what they have struggled on the road the last 2 years, really. So big win for Bama. Ole Miss. Ole Miss has exceeded my expectations this season. So I don't want to say that they're not that good, but they really benefited earlier in the season from a weak first half schedule. Now I will say like I said, they're a lot better than what I anticipated. They're probably going to finish 9-3, although the game against Mississippi State is no gimme. But hats off to Lane Kiffin, who I will get to here in a bit. Clemson beat up on Louisville by 2 scores. Clemson needed that. They've kind of struggled against the ACC competition the last few weeks and then got smacked by Notre Dame last week. Clemson really needed a good performance or a good showing, and I feel like they got that by beating Louisville, a team that had been playing pretty well the last couple of weeks, and Clemson still won by 2 scores. So I don't think that's insignificant. Boston College beat NC State. I'm just now seeing that. Wow. Georgia beat Mississippi State by 26 points. Did not see that coming. Well, I shouldn't say I didn't see that coming. I thought Mississippi State had a really good chance of covering the spread, which was, I think, Georgia minus 16. Georgia managed to cover. Right now, it looks like Georgia's the best team in the country. And I've changed my, which team I think is the best team in the country a few times this season. Started with Bama, switched to Ohio State. I think I switched to Georgia for a little bit. Then I switched to Ohio State for a little bit. Now I'm back on Georgia ever since the Tennessee game. So, but I ever since the Missouri game, Georgia has looked like the best team in the country. They have outscored their opponents by a lot. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but they have outscored their opponents quite a bit these last 4 or 5 weeks. Another game I thought was really good. Washington and Oregon. I actually turned this game on in the evening. Washington won. I don't think that this is an indictment of Oregon. I still think Oregon's a really good team, but Washington's also a good team. Washington showed up. Oregon did not. Felt like Oregon might have been reading the headlines a little bit because they had won, I think at the time, 8 games in a row since week 1, scored over 40 points in all of them. Felt like they got, they were reading their own press clippings and, thought too much of themselves. Washington has been challenged a few times this season, and Washington came out hungry and got the win. Now, Oregon did turn the ball over, I think, at the 1-yard line, and that was probably the difference in the game. Take that away, because I think Washington ended up scoring points the next drive, or the following drive. Take that away. Oregon probably wins by 2 scores. So again, I think Oregon's a really good team. Washington is also a good team. Kalen DeBoer has done a really good job there. They can score points with anyone. It just wasn't Oregon's night. Kansas State. I can't get a read on very many teams in the Big 12 outside of TCU, who I'll get to in a bit. I thought Baylor was starting to turn a corner. They got spanked by 4 touchdowns against Kansas State. Another team I can't figure out. I have picked against Kansas State a couple times this season, and I've been let down each time. Sometimes I picked them, and they've lost. Can't get a read on the Big 12 right now outside of TCU. Right now, the standings for the Big 12, I think – let me see the standings real quick. So right now, to no surprise, TCU is leading the pack. And Kansas State is in second with a record of 7-3. And I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure they're going to win this week at West Virginia. Morgantown can be a tough place to play. It's November. The elements could get involved. I think Adrian Martinez is out for the year now for Kansas State, although that might not be a horrible thing. It's crazy that the next 2 teams after TCU are Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has been thrashed the last 3 weeks. They have been outscored something like 99 to 36, I think, in their last. I wrote it. Only reason why I know that is because I said that to my brother and my dad. So those are the next 2 teams after TCU. Big 12 is wide open. And I said that going into the season that I couldn't get a read on this conference. And I don't think it has, fell short of expectations. Not that I think the conference is bad. I think the conference is very competitive. And I think TCU is a pretty good team that is getting slept on. But from Kansas State to really Kansas, like all those teams, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas, Texas Tech, Kansas, there's not much of a difference between all of them. Like each one, is very similar. The talent, there's not really a talent advantage with each one. And then obviously West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Iowa State are bringing up the rear, a tier below, I think. But the Big 12 is wide open and no one is safe. So TCU beats Texas. I did not see that. I picked Texas. That felt like the game that was going to be TCU's first loss because Texas has been a very good team at home. But they didn't show up. Quinn Ewers didn't play well. TCU, I just said, I think TCU is very underrated. I think people are sleeping on them. They're much better defensively than I think what people think and what I have given them credit for. I think this team can compete. Will they make the playoff? I don't know because they still have Baylor on the schedule. They got Baylor. They should beat Iowa State last week of the year. And then they get the Big 12 championship. And again, I just said, Big 12's wide open. So they're not out of the woods yet. But if they make the playoffs, they're probably going to play Georgia. That's going to be a tough game to win. No, they might get the number 3 seed depending on – oh, I'm sorry. No. I forgot about the SEC is probably going to get 2 teams in. But TCU can make the playoffs. They might be able to give Georgia a run for their money, but I doubt it. North Carolina beat Wake Forest. That's like the 6th or 7th game North Carolina has won this season by 1 score. So the ball is bouncing their way this season. But I will say they're able to score points. Is it Drake May? I always want to call him Derek May. Of course, ESPN just has it as D May. Drake May. Okay. Drake May's really good quarterback, for college. The Tar Heels can score points. They're probably going to play Clemson in the ACC championship, and I'll be honest, I could see Clemson losing that game. So I don't think the Clemson is, a sure thing to win the ACC. I do believe North Carolina can beat them. Depends on if Clemson's offense can get going. It's been kind of hit and miss. Definitely last season, although it was more terrible last season. And this season, it's been a little inconsistent. Florida State beat Syracuse. Florida State's hot right now. Utah beat up on Stanford. You would think that's the nail in the coffin for David Shaw. Stanford is now 3-7, so I have a very difficult time seeing David Shaw keep his job. Arizona snuck up on UCLA. Jed Fish has done a really underrated job with Arizona's program. Arizona has been a doormat in the Pac-12 really ever since the Kevin Sumlin years, which ended around, 2020 roughly? They've been a little bit of a mess. Not a little, a lot of mess. A lot of a mess. The last couple years, and they hired Jed Fish, and I remember at the time thinking, who are you hiring? He was, I think, position coach for Bill Belichick in New England. They hire him, and I got to say, he's done a decent job. They haven't made a bowl game. They're probably not going to make a bowl game this year, but they already have 4 wins. Let me see the rest of their schedule real quick. They could go bowling. They got Washington State at home. I could see them winning that game. And then they got Arizona State at home. Arizona State doesn't have a head coach and it hasn't been playing well. There's a very good chance the Wildcats are going bowling. Maybe not very good chance, but a slight chance that the Wildcats go bowling. So credit to Jed Fish. He's done a very good job this season. I think that's all I wanted to touch up on. We had a crazy week of college football. So I'll stay with the college football. I'm hearing a lot of chatter, and it's funny. My brother texted me this morning. His girlfriend is an Auburn alum, so he pays attention to Auburn news quite a bit. And he texted me this morning and said, are these Lane Kiffin rumors true to Auburn? And I laughed at him. I was like, no shot in hell. He's not going to leave one SEC school for another. And then I heard late kick Josh Pate, shout out to him, who has his own show with 24/7 Sports or CBS Network, whatever you want to say, or CBS Sports, whatever you want to say, who said, no, I think these rumors have legs. So looks like I'm going to have to eat some crow there. I don't really understand why Lane Kiffin would leave one SEC job for another. You would think, I know Auburn has some pretty notable alumni. I got to bring on Steven, my buddy Steven, to talk about this. I think he's the CEO of Apple as an Auburn alum. They have Charles Barkley, and, they got some notable alumni. So maybe Auburn does have deeper pockets than Ole Miss. I always thought of them kind of on the same level. In terms of pedigree and, resources. But Auburn might be in a better shape than I thought. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be Lane Kiffin's publicist. He got a lot of heat leaving Tennessee for USC after one season. How's it going to look when he's leaving one conference rival to another? Not looking good. In other news, or I shouldn't say not looking good, that would be a huge pull for Auburn. That would be huge. Auburn really wants to hit a home run. I thought they might have had it with Brian Harsin, but that's a whole nother conversation. You can go back a couple episodes ago and I talk about Brian Harsin. But if they get Lane Kiffin, that would be a home run hire. I think he would give Nick Saban a run for his money every single season. Honest to goodness, the SEC, maybe not this year, but in a year or two, I think it's going to be the strongest it's ever been. Because Brian Kelly's going to get LSU cooking, I think. Saban. If Auburn gets Lane Kiffin, that's going to be huge. Mike Leach is doing a good job at Mississippi State. Even Arkansas, not great this season, but Sam Pittman's done a pretty good job there. Josh Heupel has got Tennessee rolling now. Mark Stoops is no slouch at Kentucky. Kirby Smart and Georgia, the defending national champions, might be back-to-back defending national champions. And I don't think Bill Napier at Florida's done a bad job. Clark Lee is doing a decent job at Vanderbilt. Shane Beamer has South Carolina in a good spot. The SEC is about to be the strongest it's ever been. And I really believe that. And that's saying a lot because the SEC has been really strong in the last 15 years. And I just think it's going to keep getting better. It's going to be what the Big 12 is this year, but on a completely different level because the SEC recruits and has the best talent in the game. And I kind of look forward to seeing it. I want to see Brian Kelly 3 years into his tenure at LSU. I want to see if he takes the job. I want to see what Lane Kiffin does at Auburn because I think that would be a show at Auburn. Auburn recruits better than Ole Miss anyway. Mike Leach, and then you throw in Mike Leach in the mix, and Josh Heupel scoring points at Georgia. I want to see what Billy Napier can do at Florida by year 3. And Kirby Smart and Saban obviously have those programs in the best spots in the country. So the SEC is going to be really good, man, in a couple of years. So I'll go ahead and go to the other big news. Might not have made national headlines, but it's pertinent to me, and that is that West Virginia has fired, well, I don't know if he got fired. I think I read that he resigned, but has moved on from athletic director Shane Lyons. And, I don't have a problem with it. I don't remember if I said he's the athletic director at West Virginia. I thought when we hired him, it was a good hire. He was I think the number 2 at Alabama. He's from West Virginia. He's a West Virginia alum. But in my opinion, he never got off to a good start. One of the first things he implemented, and it affected my family, was he dramatically increased the ticket prices for my family's box seats that we had, which weren't, up near the press box. It was in between the, upper level and lower level. And he dramatically increased those ticket prices to the point that it pissed my dad off so much he didn't keep them. The product on the field was pretty mediocre, so not off to a good start. Then there was a stretch from about 2016 to 2019 where he was just kind of there. No coach was really hired or fired during that stretch. Just about every head coach at West Virginia for any sport, was just there, didn't leave or, didn't bring in anyone new. So he didn't really do a whole lot during that stretch. But I will give him credit. He was constantly rebuilding facilities. And I always said, that is the one thing he does that I will give him credit for, is he understands the value of building facilities, which is something, it sounds hard to believe, but that is something that West Virginia has lacked, in leadership for the last decade. Or not decade, but for a long time. That was a big complaint with Rich Rodriguez when he was the head coach at West Virginia, was he wanted better facilities. And the West Virginia administration said, no, you're doing well with what you have. We're not going to do that. We're going to save some money. You can't do that. Someone who has gone through the sport management program at West Virginia, they preach, if you're going to get into athletics, you have to upgrade facilities constantly. And I remember Shane Lyons saying, if I don't have a crane somewhere up in Morgantown building a new facility, I'm not doing my job right. So I always give him credit to him there. However, the football program is in the toilet. The men's basketball program is not in great shape. And that's really all that matters. I might have said it already on this podcast. I don't remember, but I think your job, you have 3 jobs as an athletic director. Rebuild facilities, which I just said Shane Lyons has been able to do. Put a competitive product out there for football, which he has not done. Put a competitive product out there for men's basketball, which has been hit and miss the last 5 years. So he's really only hit on 1 out of 3. And that's a problem because football and men's basketball are the revenue-generating sports. And they've been pretty, this is the lowest the football program has been in the last 40 years. Although they did just beat Oklahoma for the first time since joining the Big 12, which is just perfect, beating Oklahoma, the year we suck. Just figures. But anyway, football program's in the toilet. Basketball program isn't in great shape. I want to see how the season plays out. But regardless, Shane Lyons is gone anyway. I feel like it had to be done. And I don't like moving on from West Virginia natives, but he did, in my opinion, did not do enough to keep his job. I've been very critical of him. This was moving on from Dana Holgerson to get Neil Brown was his bright idea, and it has backfired. And on top of that, ever since the word has got out about his firing, reports have come out about the way he handled the inner workings of the athletic department, and they do not put him in a good light, especially in the basketball program. Oh my gosh, the reports that have come out through the Coliseum are insane. From trying to set up Bob Huggins to fail, not allocating resources to men's basketball. I'm like, my gosh, man, what are you doing? Like, men's basketball, you should be sinking money into men's basketball and football all the time. You can't just do it for football. You can't just do it for Olympic sports. And that's one thing I've gotten into arguments with people is they've said, he's done a lot for Olympic sports. My retort, no one gives a crap about Olympic sports. I sent it to my brother and my dad, but from his first 3 or 4 years in charge of West Virginia athletics to the last 2 to 3 is a dramatic difference. The football program, the men's basketball program, the women's basketball program, the baseball program, and the women's soccer program. Those are the 5 programs that West Virginia fans care about the most. And they are all worse in the last 2 to 3 years in terms of win percentage than they were in the first 4 or 5 years that Shane Lyons showed up. This is a problem. This is a downward trend for the programs that West Virginia fans care about. And that is not a good sign of things to come. On top of that, I've said all I think I want to say about Neil Brown, about Shane Lyons. Neil Brown, I can't imagine he's safe. And which is a good thing. Like, I wanted to make a change. I wanted to make a change last year. They decided to be patient, which has backfired. But I can't imagine he's safe. I know he just beat Oklahoma, which, by the way, if you told me when he took this job in Morgantown that we would get the Black Diamond Trophy back from Virginia Tech and he would beat Oklahoma for the first time since we joined the Big 12, I would have been like, hell yes. So we're really good, right? Nope. 21 and 24, 4 years, or 3.5 years, roughly 3.75 years technically. Nope, we're terrible. So figures. But I'm curious to see what West Virginia does. The guy they hired as the interim head coach it's a weird setup, and it has me very concerned. The guy they hired as the interim head coach has a background in politics. He has ties to Joe Manchin. That right there has red flags all over it. That shows me that Joe Manchin, who is the senator for West Virginia in the U.S. Senate, has his fingerprints on how we're handling this athletic department situation, which I hate. I don't want politicians. I don't like politicians in general. I don't want them messing around with my athletic department. On top of that, Joe Manchin is not someone that I want around WVU at all. Because, there's a long story, but his daughter did not finish her requirement, or his daughter, I'm sorry, did not finish her requirements to get her degree, yet the university gave her degree anyway because she's the daughter of Joe Manchin, who at the time was the governor. Now he's a senator. So it was a mess for the university. The president got fired, put the university in a terrible light. Like I said, I do not want Joe Manchin around West Virginia at all. It has nothing to do with his political affiliation, although that doesn't help either. I say that as a joke. I just don't want him messing around with this. I don't think, all in all, I don't think it means all that much, because I don't think E. Gordon Gee, who's the president of the university, is going to allow for people to meddle. I sound naive, though. Names, I think the dream hire is Rob Mullins, who is the athletic director at Oregon right now. Mullins is from Morgantown, went to WVU twice. So I think that's the dream hire. I could be swayed either way. I don't think he'd take the job, though. I think he's got it pretty good in Oregon. I've heard Oliver Luck's name floated around. I don't think Oliver Luck would recycle to that. Oliver Luck strikes me as a very much been there, done that person. And I don't think he would be the athletic director for West Virginia again, although I thought he was a very good athletic director for West Virginia. I think the most likely candidate is probably Kelly Zinn, who used to be at West Virginia, She is now the number 2 at LSU. I'd keep an eye on her. I think that's the most likely. She's very young. She's very highly thought of. The thing going against her is that she worked under Shane Lyons. I don't think Shane Lyons brought her in, though. I think she was already here, but worked her way up to the number 2 position. She was involved with the hiring of Neil Brown, and I think that's going to, give people the wrong impression. I don't want another name that's going to be around is Whit Babcock, who's the AD at Virginia Tech. I really don't want him because he has not done a whole lot there. He actually might be fired this year, so I really don't want that to happen. I've heard some other names. There's another guy at LSU who has WVU ties, who could be in the mix. Same, another guy with WVU ties at Georgia. So it's going to be interesting. I've heard Alex Hammond's name. He used to be the chief of staff under Dana Holgerson's football program before he entered the private sector. He has a background in politics. I'm not crazy about that one either. So we'll see. But they got to get this right. I think they have someone in their sights. They said it was going to be a quick search within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Let's just say it's 3 weeks, best case scenario. That would be end of November, early December, which honestly, timeline-wise, that's about when teams are hiring head coaches anyway. So I guess that's not horrible, but I have a feeling they already have someone or a couple people in their sights. So as a fan, I'm very curious to see how this plays out, but I do have concerns going forward. So I'll leave it at that. Like I said, no picks with it being Monday. I'll get those out later this week. I will say James gained ground on me. I got to bounce back. So I'll leave you all at that. Everyone have a good week. I will see y'all probably next week. So y'all have a good one.